Picture a loner boy yearning to make contact with aliens and a popular girl wishing for ghosts to be real, but coincidentally their worlds end up colliding and their wishes come true. Having immersed themselves into the world of paranormal and supernatural phenomenons, our lovebirds must work together to survive in this funky new world. Opening on Momo Iace arguing with her boyfriend. Annoyed that her boyfriend continues to hound her for money, but when her boyfriend asks for Momo to offer up her body, Momo fires off a roundhouse kick. Having blocked the kick, the boyfriend retaliates by kicking Momo away, leaving Momo on the ground as he breaks up with Momo, seeing as she isn't useful to him anymore. In class, Muko and Miko scold Momo for choosing such a dreadful boy to be her first boyfriend ever, but Momo defends herself by saying that her ex-boyfriend resembled her dream date, Ken Takakura. Momo cries that she loves masculine men, but her friends ask Momo to stop dreaming. That day, Momo stumbles through the school hallways, suddenly stopping in front of a class where she sees Akaran being bullied by his classmates. But before the bullies can escalate things, Momo decides to stand up for Akaran and sit beside him. Having deterred the bullying, Momo asks what Akaran is reading, but getting bored, Momo decides to leave the scene. Later that day, Momo continues to storm through the hallways, suddenly noticing Akaran calling out to her, but seeing as Akaran has misinterpreted her kindness as some sort of love confession, Momo clarifies that she doesn't have any feelings for Akaran. Luckily, Akaran shows off the magazine he was reading earlier regarding the discovery of extraterrestrial beings on Mars, asking if Momo is a fan as well. Sadly, Momo states she could care less about UFO or aliens. Akaran continues to rant about UAPs and Japan's preparation for a space war, but Momo begins to leave. When Akaran tries spilling more information on Momo, Momo gets pissed, stating that her recent breakup is souring her mood, crying that Akaran's geekiness is the reason he doesn't have friends, only to fling his magazine aside. As Momo leaves the saddened Akaran, Momo realizes she may have said too much, immediately apologizing as she hands Akaran his magazine back. Momo admits that she does believe in ghosts, but Akaran begins to giggle, stating that ghosts don't exist, causing the two to despise each other. Momo reveals that her grandma is a spirit medium, asking if Akaran has ever seen an exorcism where the victim convulses, but Akaran simply plays it off as the victim having an illness. Momo fires back by demanding to know what proves aliens exist, but as the two continue to bicker, Muko and Miko stumble onto the two, glad to see Momo is getting over her breakup. Momo states that if she can prove ghosts exist, she demands Akaran serve her as a gopher, something that Akaran agrees to, as he states he'll make Momo serve him when he proves aliens exist. That night, Momo heads to the abandoned Nagi General Hospital, having been instructed by Akaran to head to the top floor and call for a UFO to abduct her. Momo is freaked out by the rundown location, wondering what sorts of things these aliens will do to her once abducted. But Momo gets weirded out hearing that Akaran may have been abducted in the past, but his memories seem to have been wiped. As for Akaran, he's seen visiting an abandoned railway tunnel as instructed by Momo, boldly heading over some guardrails as he declares he'll prove ghosts don't exist. With some teasing from Momo, Akaran soldiers on into the dark tunnel, but Akaran gets furious hearing that Momo has never met a ghost before. Momo reminds Akaran that her grandma is a spirit medium and that her grandparents mean a lot to her, seeing as her parents are never around, something that makes Akaran feel sorry for Momo. Momo adds that her family is quite weird, having been forced in her younger years to uphold rituals on her way to school for good luck, but naturally such a thing caused her to be bullied by the kids her age. But worst of all, the boys she liked made fun of her. Momo remembers blaming her grandma for making her feel so outcast, feeling bad that her relationship with her grandma grew distant since then. It's also the reason Momo believes in ghosts so much as she wants to defend her grandma's beliefs. Momo had realized that she hated the fact that the boy she liked didn't believe in ghosts, and in turn her grandma, something that Momo refuses to compromise on, especially since her grandma did so much to raise her. But having said too much, Momo asks why Akaran believes in aliens. Akaran states that he doesn't have any solid reason like Momo to believe in aliens, but having discovered some bloody footprints leading up to him, distracting himself by pointing out how easy it is to speak to Momo over the phone. Slowly getting freaked out, Akaran checks behind him for any ghost. But upon turning back into the tunnel, Akaran stumbles onto the ghost of Granny that morbidly offers to do kinky things to Akaran. Terrified, Akarin sprints back through the tunnel, reporting to Momo that he found a ghost. But as Akarin continues towards the exit of the tunnel, the exit suddenly seems more distant than before. When Akarin turns to check on the ghost granny, the entire tunnel turns red, hearing from Momo that the Turbo Granny ghost is a creature you should never lose to in a race, seeing as you'll be cursed if you lose. As the granny sprints after Akarin, it easily catches up to him, forcing Akarin to hang up on Momo, scaring her. Rushing to check on Akarin, Momo instead notices some flashing lights, only to notice 3 businessmen staring at her. With Momo attempting to flee, she's ultimately captured, waking up bound to a chair only to hear the 3 businessmen utter that they are Serpoians from the planet Serpo. Momo is shocked to be speaking to aliens, but gets annoyed seeing as they ripped her clothes off of her, demanding to be set free. The alien Rokiro reveals that their species reproduces by cloning and doesn't house any females, stating that they want to reclaim their former glory by mating with a human, unveiling a mechanized serpent that horrifies Momo. Momo declares that her first time will be reserved for Kin Takakura, but as the aliens hold Momo down, they begin arousing Momo by tampering with her brain waves using psychokinesis. The aliens are impressed that Momo is resisting their arousal, but as the aliens try to force themselves onto Momo, they suddenly hear a ring from Momo's phone. As one of the aliens picks up the call, Turbo Granny can be seen emerging from the phone, immediately dispatching one of the aliens. It's revealed that Akarin had been cursed by Turbo Granny and seems to be struggling with control over his new body. But as Turbo Granny takes back her body, we see the aliens unveiling their true form. Revealed to be disturbing frog-looking monsters, one of the aliens attempt to bind Turbo Granny with her psychokinesis, but Turbo Granny simply speeds up dispatching another alien. When Granny hunts down the third, she is ultimately caught and flung into a nearby wall. But with Akarin able to temporarily gain control of his body, he's annoyed that he never was able to make contact with aliens even when he was a young boy calling out to them. Akarin was bullied due to his beliefs, but having met Momo, Akarin was shocked she was the first to ever believe in him, crying that he won't let anyone hurt her. As Akarin begins accepting Turbo Granny into his body, he slowly begins to morph, but having been slammed into the wall by the alien again, Akarin's transformation is halted. Turning to Momo, the alien declares it'll make their session quick, resuming its telekinesis to arouse Momo. Momo suddenly remembers the moment when she had argued with her grandma. When Momo had told her grandma about the boy she liked bullying her, her grandma had asked Momo to tense her abs and fire off some chi from her head to scare away the bad spirits. But having been reminded of the boys bullying her, Momo had run off blaming her grandma for her bullies. In the present, Momo is in a daze, heeding her grandma's advice, choosing to flex her abs only to surprisingly break free from her chains. Akarin cries that Momo is using psychic powers, powers that even disrupt the alien psychokinesis. But seeing her newborn powers, Momo declares that her grandma was right all along. Sending out a flying kick, Momo is reminded of her ex-boyfriend, officially dispatching the third alien as it's sent flying into its UFO. As the area around her begins to fall apart, Momo searches for Akarin, only to notice Turbo Granny has taken over his body. When Granny tries pouncing on Momo, Momo lets loose her powers to knock Granny out of Akarin, but seeing as Granny is still cursing Akarin, Momo watches Granny vanish, taunting Momo to seek it out in the tunnel if she wants Akarin's curse lifted. At the same time, we see the UFO flying towards the abandoned hospital, ramming through it only to crash land onto the road nearby. With the duo barely surviving the crash, they both acknowledge that aliens and ghosts are real, but Momo is annoyed that she has to continually suppress Akarin's curse with her psychic powers. Seeing as he needs to defeat Turbo Granny, Akarin gives Momo his clothes, apologizing for getting Momo involved as he states he'll deal with Turbo Granny himself. Momo reminds Akarin that he needs her powers to fight Granny, but as Akarin accepts Momo's proposal, he asks Momo to please cover herself up. Getting flustered, all of a sudden, Momo takes the chance to ask for Akarin's full name, coincidentally hearing that Akarin's full name is Kin Takakura as well. With Momo refusing to believe Akarin has such a cool name, we see Akarin's curse slowly taking over again, forcing Momo to suppress it with her psychic powers. Momo states that Akarin will be his nickname moving forward, but as the duo walk back home, the sun begins to rise, meaning they'll have to wait till night to face Turbo Granny, since ghosts only come out at night. Seeing as Akarin needs some clothes, Momo takes him to his granny's place, But Momo warns Akarin that her grandma despises boys, especially her ex. As the two enter the property, Akarin passes by a torii gate that suddenly ignites his body. But seeing no other choice, Momo tosses Akarin into a nearby river with her powers. Seeing as the gate had a protective totem on it, Momo apologizes, removing the barrier only for Akarin to safely enter the property. As the duo enter Momo's home, they head upstairs where Momo begins to change, but seeing as they broke line of sight, Momo orders Akarin to face a wall while she changes. That way she can still suppress Akarin's curse. Having changed into a fresh fit, Momo tosses Akarin one of her jackets, but Momo wonders how Turbo Granny cursed Akarin. Realizing something, Akarin checks his pants, realizing that his reproductive organ is missing, something Momo is curious to verify. Denying Momo access, Akarin gets changed, admitting that he only started talking to Momo since he had never had a friend before, and it seemed that Momo would be his best bet at first. Akarin admits that Momo lives a far different life than his, apologizing for getting Momo involved with such dangerous things. But Momo gets annoyed at Akarin for assuming how she feels. Momo states that Akarin has no friends because he pushes everyone away, something Akarin does not deny. But luckily Momo is happy to continue being Akarin's friend even after his curse is resolved, something that makes Akarin tear up. Embarrassed Akarin calls Momo ugly, something that pisses Momo off, but before the two can brawl, they both hear a doorbell. Akarin wonders if Momo's grandma is home, but Momo reveals that she's never heard such a doorbell noise before, realizing that a spirit must have entered their property, and it's because they removed the talisman protecting them. Seeing as they need to reinstate the barrier, the duo sneak out the back door, both peeping to see who is at the front door, but no one is there. Akarin takes note of the cloudy sky, only for the surrounding land to be encased in stone, stopping any escape. The duo realizes that they can't reattach the talisman, seeing as the torii gate had been encased in stone as well. But upon inspecting the talisman a little more, Momo suddenly notices blood dripping from her nose. Right on cue, Akarin cries out in pain, having a nose bleed as well. But as Momo scans the perimeter, she notices a black fog has covered the surroundings. In the sky, a spirit declares that it has found our duo, uttering that a promise has been broken, clapping its hands only to send out a burst of wind. Seeing the spirit firing off a punch, our duo leap to evade, watching as the spirit smashes the talisman into the nearby wall. Terrified, the duo run for dear life, both flung beside the nearby house, only to continue fleeing from the spirit's attacks. Hiding behind the house, Akarin recognizes the spirit as the Flatwoods monster, an alien that is commonly 3 meters tall and have been seen in the prefectures of Yamanashi, Japan. Momo wonders if there is a link between spirits and aliens, but seeing the monster spitting out the black fog, Momo states that she can't use her full powers while suppressing Akarin's curse. With Akarin's curse spiking again, the duo flee from their hiding spot, seeing as the monster smashed the area they were in while searching for them. As Momo suppresses the curse, Akarin takes note of the state of Momo's home, realizing that he can't stand idly by and watch the monster wreak havoc anymore. Akarin asks if Momo can partially release the curse, both suddenly forced to relocate, seeing as the monster has discovered them again. But Akarin cries for Momo to continue suppressing Turbo Granny's mind control whilst allowing the physical enhancements through. Seeing no other choice, Momo focuses in, slowly allowing the curse to take over Akarin's body. But as the monster throws an axe kick onto the duo, Akarin rescues Momo, having transformed with Momo's help. Overflowing with power, Akarin begins talking strangely, but whilst Akarin and Momo are distracted, the monster approaches and attacks Akarin from behind. Luckily, Akarin had reacted fast enough, chewing off the monster's fingers. With Akarin and the monster face to face, Akarin suddenly begins coughing up blood, allowing the monster to get the upper hand, stomping Akarin into the ground. But Momo reacts quickly to rescue Akarin from his daze. Having reverted back to his human self, Akarin says his body can't handle the curse. But as the two observe the monster, they suddenly realize that the monster is performing sumo wrestling moves, wondering if they can defeat it by having its hands touch the ground. Intrigued by the idea, Akarin transforms once again, hearing that Momo will assist Akarin. But as the duo rush towards the monster, they spot the creature firing a ripple attack. As both barely dodge, Akira manages to rip apart the monster's ankle, allowing Momo to drag the monster onto the ground, confirming its palm disappeared once it touched the ground. Sadly, the creature rolls to prevent its other hand from touching the ground, grabbing a hold of Momo only to toss her into the nearby wall with the torii gate. Following up by pummeling Momo, all whilst Akiran's curse begins to take over, but luckily, Momo is still awake to keep Akiran in check. Momo voices how annoying it is that the monster cheated, but this only pisses the monster off, prompting it to wail onto Momo. Having endured enough, Momo reveals she had used the monster's punches to carve out the torii gate, swiftly activating her psychic skills to drag Akiran toward her, only for her to reattach the talisman, setting the monster ablaze. Seeing as Akiran is outside the gate with her, they both gasp, seeing as everything is back to normal. But Momo does compliment Akiran's new permed hair. Tired, Momo suddenly collapses from exhaustion, leaving Akiran to begin transforming, seeing as the granny curse is taking over. Elsewhere, we see Santa Doria as a psychic giving a reading to a young male idol Shoma on a television show, but having gotten everything wrong about them, the producers wonder if Doria's is even psychic. Entering a taxi, Doria's is grilled by her taxi driver for being a fake psychic, but suddenly Doria's exits the taxi, ordering the driver to scram. Back with Akiran, we see his cursed body prepare to devour the unconscious Momo, but a sudden brick is broken over Akiran's face, blowing him back. Arriving on the scene, Doria's is revealed to be Momo's grandma, Seiko Iase. Seiko orders Akiran to attack her, but blinking and appearing behind Seiko, Akiran is suddenly set ablaze. Seiko admits that Akiran is quite fast, but having set up a trap prior, Seiko traps Akiran in a circle etched into the ground. Seiko reveals that she can convert the inside or outsides of her drawn circles into barriers, depending where she places a nail. But approaching Akiran, Seiko hears Akiran cursing at her. Seiko takes out her bat, clobbering and taunting Akiran. Seiko converts her bat into a pencil, drawing an even tighter circle around Akiran, but Turbo Granny's voice states that Akiran's body will perish if she dies. Sadly, Seiko could care less, seeing as her number one priority is to protect Momo, placing a nail in the circle only to set Akiran on fire. Later that day, Momo wakes up in bed, rushing downstairs only to greet Seiko. Seiko says she knows Momo has been messing around with spirits, but when Momo asks where her cursed friend is, Seiko declares that she has eradicated it. Momo cries for Seiko to stop joking around, but Seiko reminds Momo that ghosts aren't real, and plus Seiko is a fake ghost medium like Momo had accused her of being. Momo is annoyed that her grandma still holds a grudge against her, but seeing no other way, Momo apologizes to her grandma with a deep bow, begging to know where Akiran is. Hearing Seiko reveal Akiran is in the main shrine, Momo bolts towards the location, pleading for Akiran to be okay, but upon opening the shrine doors, Momo spots Akiran nonchalantly enjoying a rice ball. Slamming the door, Momo is embarrassed she was worried for Akiran, but suddenly Seiko appears, teasing Momo for being into geeks. Seiko states that the shrine will suppress Akiran's curse, but leaving it will reawaken it. Momo takes the chance to fill Seiko in on Turbo Granny cursing Akiran and her newly acquired psychic abilities. But Seiko is impressed that Akiran is cursed by such a powerful creature. Apparently, Turbo Granny used to be called 100 Kilo Granny, a yokai that haunts a tunnel, and a monster even Seiko herself avoided due to its immense spiritual power. Seiko states that spirits are the strongest when they fight in their bound locations, and seeing as Turbo Granny had fused with the tunnel, there is no chance of defeating them. Seiko advises Momo to forget about Akiran and continue living a normal life. But Momo refuses to do such a thing, quoting Ken Takakura and stating such a man would never leave someone in need of help alone. Amused, Seiko teases Momo for loving Akiran, but seeing as she can't leave her granddaughter to face the spirit alone, Seiko advises Momo to draw the spirit out of the city. Since Turbo Granny is quite prideful when it comes to winning races, Seiko instructs Momo to draw Turbo Granny out of Kamigo City to weaken it, and this way Turbo Granny can be taken out. Momo wonders why Seiko can't just plaster some talismans around Turbo Granny's tunnel. But sadly, Seiko says her talismans borrow powers from the gods in their current city, and each city have different gods ruling over them, meaning once the Granny is out of the city, the talismans will be no help. Seeing as drawing the Granny out from their bound city is the only way, Seiko states that Akarin must begin training to outrun the Turbo Granny, but he'll need to carry Momo whilst training to keep his curse in check. Sadly, Akarin currently in his transform mode is quite weak, so Seiko orders Akarin to do push-ups, sit-ups, back extensions and squats for 100 reps each, and Momo needs to improve her psychic skills. As Seiko heads to bed, Akarin mentions how young Momo's granny is, but Akarin also takes the chance to apologize for being so weak when facing the Flatwood monster, promising to repay the favor one day. Momo says Akarin is overthinking things, promising to always be there for him, something that flusters Akarin. Later that night, the news reported that all of Seiko's readings on Shoma were actually correct, but Seiko could care less. The next day, Akarin realizes he can't go to the bathroom without Momo watching him to suppress his curse. But Seiko asks Momo to explain how she is suppressing Akarin's curse in the first place. Momo reveals that she is able to sense and capture Akarin's aura with her hands, ultimately shrinking and subduing the curse. This is also true for objects she wants to pick up and move around, but Seiko asks Momo to try envisioning and feeling out the aura with her eyes closed, something that Momo manages to do, even surprised that Akarin's aura is quite cold. Sadly, it doesn't work very well as Momo has to relock onto Akarin, but having had enough, Akarin makes a dash for the bathroom. Momo stops Akarin from entering the front door, chasing Akarin down as she doesn't want a boy using her bathroom. But as the three rush towards a different bathroom, Akarin ends up relieving himself, all whilst Momo watches. Seiko utters that she suspects Momo's powers have most likely been sealed off, asking Momo to train alongside Akarin to further awaken them. But suddenly Turbo Granny's voice fills the surrounding area, as Seiko seems to be frozen in place with a nosebleed. Turbo Granny reveals that it can curse anyone that comes into contact with Akarin, demanding that Momo come see it in the tunnel tonight, or else it'll ensure everyone around Akarin is cursed. Retreating into the shadows, Seiko is seen all right with a bloody nose and ear, but seeing one of her talismans all bloodied, Seiko asks Momo what just happened. That night, Seiko suits our duo in the finest gear to ward off spirits. But as Momo turns to leave, Seiko quickly gives Momo a hug, reminding Momo to live no matter what. As the duo ride off, Seiko prays for them, but funnily enough, our duo have to board a train to conserve energy, drawing the attention of other passengers. With our duo appearing before the cursed tunnel, they both argue who should enter the tunnel first. But stealing their resolve, they both enter the tunnel, declaring they'll draw Turbo Granny out of the city to weaken and defeat it. Shining their light into the dark tunnel, our duo suddenly spot a massive head blocking their path, both preparing to flee, but they realize Turbo Granny has blocked them in from both sides of the tunnel. As the tunnel turns red, Momo quickly retrieves some bats they've brought, flinging them towards the eyes of one of the faces using her powers, but it doesn't faze the monster. Akarin cries for Momo to release his curse, allowing him to swell with power, but as Akarin marches towards one of the heads, he suddenly transforms back to a human. Turbo Granny reveals that she has removed Akarin's curse herself. That way they can't harm Turbo Granny with her own curse. Turbo Granny roars at our duo, preparing to devour them whole. But as Momo remembers her grandma's advice, Momo begins to taunt Turbo Granny, mocking how slow it is in a race. Momo demands to race Turbo Granny, something that surprisingly convinces Turbo Granny to morph back into her singular body, immediately accepting the challenge. Turbo Granny states she can devour our duo anytime, agreeing to count to 10 to allow our duo a head start. But when Turbo Granny tags our duo, their game of tag will be over. Momo says she hates people that break rules, allowing our duo to make their way to the tunnel's exit, but strangely Turbo Granny is counting weirdly, suddenly declaring that 10 minutes is up. In an instant, Momo is dragged into the tunnel and tied up by some hands, prompting Turbo Granny to restart the 10-minute count as it's time for Akarin to flee. Akarin is pissed at Turbo Granny's underhand tactics, demanding that Turbo Granny fight fair. But within a few seconds, Turbo Granny reaches the 10-minute count, reaching out to tag Akarin. Remembering that he had promised to protect Momo, Akarin rushes at Turbo Granny, clamping down on the monster's flesh as he demands the creature free Momo. Turbo Granny is pissed, attempting to rip Akarin off it, but sadly Akarin's sacred clothing is preventing Turbo Granny from harming Akarin. In pain, Turbo Granny chooses to possess Akarin, using his own hands to shred his clothes. But as Turbo Granny heads over to devour Momo, it suddenly senses a presence crushing it. Revealed to have been Momo, who has finally detected Turbo Granny's curse in Akron. Momo begins to subdue the cursed flame, watching as Turbo Granny rushes to attack Momo. But luckily Momo completely seals Turbo Granny within Akron. With Akron completely fine now, Granny cries to be set free, all whilst a strange monster smashes through the tunnel, crying for Turbo Granny to be freed. As the location-bound spirit chases after our duo, Akron wonders why the spirit is a crab, but Momo says the dead turn into crabs in order to cross a river into the afterlife. As Turbo Granny cries out to the crab, we see Momo ordering Akron to transform, both barely dodging an attack from the crab. With Momo riding Akron, Akron states his body won't be able to hold on for much longer, choosing to leap off the nearby railing, all plummeting down into the town below them. Having used one of his 2 full throttle moves to soften their fall, the gang notice the area around them turning red, all watching as the crab leaps onto their location. Spotting various faces on the crab's back, Akron begins to run, realizing that the people around them can't see the crab. But worst of all, Akron doesn't seem to have the strength to make it out of Shono City before he collapses. Getting an idea, Momo instructs Akron to head into a nearby Japanese bar, choosing to weave up some stairs to distract the crab, only to position below some pipes. When the crab appears before our duo, Momo tears open some pipes to flood the monster with hot water, something that ends up boiling it. Seeing the boiled crab all stiff, our duo continue to flee the city, reaching the edge of Shono City. But out of nowhere, a horde of undeads rush them. Turbo Granny utters that a cemetery is near the edge of Shono City, and Granny is now using the undeads to hunt down our duo as well. When Momo tries to run alongside Akron, she suddenly trips, giving the undeads along with a newly healed crab a chance to surround them. Something that makes Momo ask Akron to use his final full throttle. Seeing no other way, Akron transforms, suddenly bursting through the horde of undeads attacking them, assisted by Momo, who helps move away some of the undeads with her power. Having used some power lines as an anchor point, our duo managed to run alongside a building to evade the swarm of undeads, suddenly cut off by the massive crab. Luckily, Momo tosses a car at the crab, buying Akron enough time to scale the monster and use it as a launch pad to reach a nearby crane. Swinging around the crane with Momo's powers, our duo launch themselves towards a nearby moving train. But before they can reach the train, Akron suddenly reverts back to a human. Desperate, Momo expands her psychic palms to slow down their fall, crying for Akron to transform once more, giving Akron the courage to surpass his limits and transform in time to soften their fall. With our duo both fatigued and exhausted, Momo hurries Akron to move, seeing as they're almost out of the city, but realizing that Turbo Granny is no longer sealed inside of Akron. Turbo Granny appears, kicking our duo to the ground. Seeing as Turbo Granny has completely bested them, Momo states she hates people who cheat, something that pisses off Turbo Granny as she merges with her crab body, offering Momo another chance to flee. Turbo Granny offers to count to 20 minutes this time, but Momo says she'll only need 1 second, suddenly using her powers to latch onto the moving train nearby, all whilst dragging the exhausted Akron with her. Horrified, Turbo Granny begins chasing after the train, barely losing to the train's immense speed, but racking its brain, Turbo Granny manages to leap onto the train before it leaves her behind. Although Turbo Granny is in front of them, Momo cries that they've already won, suddenly zooming out only to see Seiko at the edge of Shono City, having plastered her talismans in the adjacent city of Kamigo City in preparation for the monster. As Momo holds off Turbo Granny from advancing, the train passes into the next city, prompting Turbo Granny to suddenly erupt, spewing out the bodies of its past victims. At the next station, Momo confirms that Turbo Granny is indeed defeated, cutting to the next day, where Seiko takes our duo to pray at the tunnel. Apparently, many girls were attacked near Turbo Granny's tunnel, and it may have been the girls' unfair deaths that ultimately drew Turbo Granny to set its nest near the tunnel. But it's still wrong for a spirit like Turbo Granny to attack the living out of vengeance for the girls who unfairly met their fates. Seiko reminds our duo to never disrespect the dead, as it's the bare minimum to coexist with spirits. But Seiko is glad that Momo and Akron made it out in one piece. At home, Seiko and Momo argue over who gets to eat more boiled crab, all whilst Akron sits awkwardly. Seiko takes the chance to check if Akron's reproductive organ has returned, chasing him around the room, all whilst Momo slurps up the crab meat. Seeing as it's getting late, Akarin bids Momo and Seiko farewell, but before Akarin leaves, Momo says she'll see him tomorrow at school, exciting Akarin. The next day, Akarin wonders how he should greet Momo, nervously walking by Momo so as to not embarrass himself. But out of nowhere, Momo lightly shoves Akarin, having been waiting for him. As the two walk to their classes, Momo wonders why the aliens she met were all guys and what they eat to survive, but as the two depart to their separate classes, Akarin is immediately back to being bullied by his classmates. Sitting down, Akarin calms himself, seeing as he's finally made a friend who accepts him for who he is. But as we follow Momo, we see she is completely zoned out of class. Miko and Yuko fears Momo is still thinking about her ex-boyfriend, but is surprised to see Momo acting strangely. In class, both Akarin and Momo yearn to speak to each other, both waiting out their classes only to accidentally pass each other squeezing through a horde of people. With both Akarin and Momo visiting each other's classes, funnily enough, they both barely miss each other, both wondering if the others dislike them. Seeing as their lunch break is almost over, they both reluctantly prepare to head back to class. But having not seen where they were going, they both bump into each other, accidentally touching lips. They both confess that they've been searching for each other, accidentally making the moment awkward as they wonder what they should say next, but out of nowhere Miku and Muko cry that they just saw our duo kissing. Immediately the lovebirds defend themselves by insulting each other, ending their argument as they both storm back to class. But Akarin chooses to take a pit stop in the bathroom. When Akarin goes to relieve himself, he suddenly realizes something is missing, cutting back to Momo where her classmates all pester her over a new love interest. Out of nowhere, Akarin appears, signaling to speak with Momo alone, but still angry about their argument earlier. Momo refuses to leave her seat. As Akarin continues to beg, he admits he was wrong to insult Momo earlier, but Momo is still too stubborn to budge. Momo's friends are amazed at Akarin's persistence, but seeing Momo's cold demeanor, Akarin wonders if Momo truly cares about him, seeing as she refuses to speak to him when she is around her friends. That evening, Akarin wanders around the lockers in search of Momo, but having accidentally bumped into Arya Shurtoria, Akarin is caught off guard. Arya strangely utters that she knows Akarin is a kind person, all whilst Momo stumbles onto Akarin chatting with Arya. As Arya leaves with Tsubame, Arya begins mocking how pathetic Akarin behaved in front of her, something that pisses Momo off. Using her psychic powers, Momo smashes a metal bowl onto Arya, knocking her out. With Tsubame and Anzu checking on Arya, Akarin prepares to help as well, but Momo grabs on Akarin. Momo says they should head home, glaring at Arya as she cries most girls aren't deserving of Akarin's attention. On the way home, Momo apologizes for being so stubborn earlier, admitting that their little kiss got her flustered. Seeing as they've made up, Akarin reveals that although they've defeated Turbo Granny, it seems his balls are still missing. Sitting down with Seiko, Akarin explains the situation, all whilst Momo laughs her head off. Needing to solve the issue, Seiko states they'll be peeping into Akarin's soul, taking out a mirror only to have Akarin plunge his feet into a water bath. With Momo retrieving a doll and a talisman, Seiko begins her ritual, first slapping Akarin with a paper fan only to order for the spirit within Akarin to leave. Sadly, nothing happens, but Momo declares that Akarin's aura briefly changed when he was smacked, prompting Seiko to order Momo to rip out the thing infecting Akarin's soul. As Seiko smacks Akarin once more, Momo pulls as hard as she can, all turning to face the doll, only to notice the talisman beside it turn red. In an instant, the doll flees the scene, forcing our trio to chase after it, but needing a faster way to track it down, Momo closes her eyes only to reach out to the doll's soul. Seeing as the doll was hiding in a closet, Momo smirks at the adorable doll cursing at them. But when Seiko inspects the doll, she states that Turbo Granny is inside the doll. Apparently before Turbo Granny was incinerated by Seiko's talismans, it had converted into its astral form and hid inside of Akarin's soul in hopes of retrieving its full strength one day. Sadly, Momo states that they have no intentions of allowing Turbo Granny to return to its full strength, but Turbo Granny throws a fit, stating that she'll snap everyone's bones. Akarin threatens to eradicate Turbo Granny if it doesn't return his balls, but Turbo Granny states that if she perishes, Akarin will never get back what he wants. Turbo Granny tries, ordering Akarin to slay Seiko and Momo, But out of nowhere, Akarin transforms, confusing Momo, seeing as Akarin shouldn't be cursed anymore. Seiko reveals that when Turbo Granny's soul was ejected from Akarin, her spiritual powers remained within Akarin, and only Seiko herself can place Turbo Granny back into Akarin, something that makes Turbo Granny sweat. As Seiko slaps up Turbo Granny, Akarin reverts back to his human form, uttering that he was able to transform when he felt angry. Seeing as Turbo Granny is basically useless, Momo begs Turbo Granny to give back Akarin's private parts, knowing that Turbo Granny is actually a kind spirit, having felt sympathy for the girls that passed away, unfortunately, near her tunnel. Giving in, Turbo Granny declares that she no longer has Akarin's balls, having dropped them somewhere. Turbo Granny utters that Akarin's belonging should be covered in gold and are 5 centimeters in diameter. But Momo cries that finding such a small item would be impossible. Unfortunate since the balls are dense in spiritual energy and may attract other spirits and yokais. Turbo Granny says the spirits may use the ball to revive themselves, pissing off Momo as it's all Turbo Granny's fault for losing the balls, prompting the gang to return home. Seiko says she'll ask around for any lost balls, reminding Akarin to keep his new powers in check, only to cut to the next day, where Akarin's classmates ask Akarin if he is dating Momo. When Akarin says he isn't, the boys ask if Akarin can introduce them to Momo, seeing as she is their type. Realizing that the boys are spreading rumors about Momo, Akarin gets furious, suddenly transforming only to grab one of the boys by the collar. As the boys crumble in comparison to Akarin's strength, they beg to be let go, snapping Akarin out of his daze. Rushing to his table, Akarin tries calming down with some reading, only to realize Turbo Granny had snuck into his bag. Instantly running towards a secluded place, Akarin demands to know why Turbo Granny is at school with him. But Turbo Granny tries beckoning Akarin to allow her into his body, and in exchange, she will help him control his powers. Akarin says he won't be falling for any of Turbo Granny's scheme, suddenly stuffing the doll back into his bag as he hears a voice call out to him. But luckily, it's only Momo. Akarin tries telling Momo about Turbo Granny sneaking in his bag, but Akarin suddenly realizes how cute Momo is, beginning to run away, all whilst Momo chases after him. Alone, Turbo Granny is left to explore the school, all whilst Momo complains to her girlies about Akarin avoiding her. Miko reveals that Akarin had gotten into a fight defending Momo from possible rumors spreading about her, something that makes Momo blush, but at the same time we see Arya passing through the school halls. Arya declares that her elegant self can brighten anyone's day, but Arya is still pissed about the day Momo had embarrassed her by dropping the bowl on her head. Plus, it's revealed that Arya herself is the source of all the nasty rumors around Momo. Strangely enough, Arya had seen a wing-like object appear from Momo, believing Momo to be a demon of some sort. Arya says it's fate that she has been given the eyes to see such things, taking out a golden ball only to promise to eradicate the world of all demons. Flashing back, Arya was heading home at night when a golden ball landed on her head. When she had picked it up, she saw a bright light flashing on a passing train. Frightened, she dropped it, and everything went back to normal, but when she picked it up again, she could see specks of bright lights, having been remnants of clash. At school, Arya thanks Tsubaim and Anzu for bringing her a Bible and a cross. But as her friends get tired of Arya's weird antics, Arya suddenly rushes to open a nearby window, demanding to know who the woman in the red dress is. Sadly, Arya's friend can't see anything, watching as Arya begins acting weird again, only to begin flirting with boys who notice her acting strange as well. With Turbo Granny watching everything transpire, we cut to the rooftop where Momo and Akarin have lunch, but Momo asks why Akarin is avoiding her gaze. Momo also demands to know why Turbo Granny is with them, preparing to have a brawl with the doll. But as Akarin holds back Turbo Granny, he utters that Turbo Granny had noticed a strange lady at their school. Turbo Granny says she was looking for the golden ball around the school, seeing as a human could have picked them up, and since humans may be attracted to shiny gold things, the person that picked it up will probably awaken their spiritual powers upon coming into contact with the dense magical ball. Sadly, having spiritual powers puts them at risk as spirits may attack them, something that alerts Momo and Akarin. In class, Arya continues to fondle the golden ball, wondering if she could defeat Momo's demonic powers alone. But as Arya checks on the lady in the red dress, she notes how it's getting ever so close to her. With the school day ending, we see Akarin meeting up with Momo, but out of nowhere Arya appears, asking to speak with Momo privately. Having no choice, Momo heads off with Arya, all whilst Turbo Granny tells Akron that Arya is the one in possession of the Golden Ball. Being taken to an abandoned factory, Momo gets weirded out, demanding to know what Arya wants to speak about. But out of nowhere, Tsubame and Anzu tackle Momo to the ground only to bind her arms. Donning her gear, Arya tries exorcising Momo, believing she is a demon, but her pathetic cross along with her holy prayers do nothing to Momo. Pissed, Momo uses her psychic powers to fling Tsubame and Anzu aside, only for Arya to try exorcising Momo again, this time rubbing her golden ball on Momo as she cries for the sacred ball to give her strength. With Momo ordering Arya to hand over Akron's golden ball, we see Akron arriving on the scene, seemingly fleeing away from something. At that moment, we see the red-dressed lady tackling Arya, muttering that it's been waiting so long for Arya to finally see her. With Arya suddenly remembering a memory of her as a child, Momo cries for Akron to help Arya, prompting Akron to transform, rushing down the spirit. Sadly, the spirit easily evades, taunting Akron as he dashes towards the red-dressed lady. In mere moments, the spirit outmaneuvers Akron, grabbing a hold of him only to swallow Akron whole. Annoyed, Momo grabs hold of Akron with her powers, but seeing as her hands are bound, Momo is unable to use her full powers and instead receives a devastating kick from the spirit. Swallowing Akron whole, the spirit says it has waited 10 years to reunite with Arya, reminding Arya that it is her mommy, seeing as Arya had called it mommy in the past. Arya is disgusted by the demon's pleading, suddenly all turning towards Momo as she appears from the rubble unharmed, surprised to see Turbo Granny is also unharmed. Turbo Granny takes out a phone she stole, declaring the spirit before them is acrobatic Silky, but as Arya cries she'll eradicate monsters like the tall lady before her, the spirit gets upset, gobbling down Arya whole as well. Infuriated, the tall spirit suddenly erupts, sending her hair towards Momo, only to ensnare her, dragging Momo into the air by her neck. When Momo curses at the spirit, the tall lady simply begins to spin, sending Momo flying through the air only to smash her into the ground. The tall lady gives Momo a chance to redeem herself, asking Momo to call it mommy, but when Momo refuses, the lady swallows up Momo whole. With only Turbo Granny left, Turbo Granny orders the spirit to spit out the kids, but before the spirit can disrespect Turbo Granny, the lady's body is set on fire, having been lit on fire from the inside out when Momo used Arya's cross-shaped lighter along with the spirit's hair as fuel. As the tall lady burns up, it ends up vomiting out our trio, suddenly transforming into a more grotesque monster. Crying, Silky demands to have Arya back, tossing several rails at the gang, but they manage to evade. Rushing through the factory, Akron says Arya's unconscious body is holding them back, but when Momo says she has an idea, Momo is suddenly pulled away, having been caught in Silky's web-like trap. With Momo tossed aside and incapacitated, Silky locks onto Akron, forcing him to continue through the factory, making use of his transformed body to lure Silky away from Momo. As Akron prioritizes Arya's safety, he evades the tall lady's hair with some aerial maneuvers, but suddenly is struck down, forced to tank a kick from the spirit. Seeing Arya laying before it, Silky says she can be together with Arya if it consumes her, but as the monster reaches towards the unconscious girl, the monster suddenly halts in its place. Momo appears, stating that the hair Silky had sprung across the factory ended up tying around too many things and has bound Silky in place, but refusing to give up, Silky kicks down a nearby pillar to free up some space. Seeing an opening, Momo rushes to restrain Silky's legs with her powers, all whilst asking Akron to slay the monster with his full throttle. Akron cries that he doesn't know how to do such a thing, as his past full throttles was out of desperation. But as Silky rips out her own hair to set herself free, it blows away Momo's psychic hands, flinging its hair towards Momo. In an instant, Akron transforms to protect Momo, spearheading a tackle that ends up blowing a hole through the factory along with Silky. But although Momo is amazed, Turbo Granny scolds Akron for his pathetic use of his power. Seeing as Silky isn't a priority anymore, the gang remember to retrieve Akron's golden ball, but as Momo celebrates a successful retrieval of Akron's family jewels, Turbo Granny reveals that Arya is dead. Horrified, our duo confirm that Arya doesn't have a pulse, learning that any human swallowed by a spirit would perish. And it's actually lucky that Akarin and Momo themselves didn't pass away as well. Desperate, Momo tries resuscitating Arya's heart with her powers, all whilst Akarin gives Arya mouth to mouth. But when Turbo Granny tries calling the ambulance, they all notice Silky crying out to Arya. When Akarin prepares to attack the spirit once more, Silky offers to revive Arya by giving its life to her. But our duo refuse to believe the spirit. Silky states that she has good intentions, something Turbo Granny validates, finally convincing our duo to trust Silky. Although Momo is still skeptical, she hears Silky asking for her aura to be connected to Arya's. That way Arya's dim aura can be revived. Seeing no other option, Momo focuses in managing to connect both auras, but suddenly we get a peek into the tall lady's life. Having done anything for work, Silky was revealed to have a child that meant the world to her, forcing Silky to take on odd jobs just to make a living and raise the child. With time passing by, Silky's daughter grew fond of ballet, ultimately receiving a red dress that she treasured. Sadly, Silky had borrowed money and failed to repay her dues, leading her loan sharks to punish Silky and take her daughter as collateral. Pissed, Silky had frantically tried chasing after the loan sharks, but with her wounds getting the best of her, Silky passed away soon after. Flung into another world, Silky danced mindlessly at her cruel fate, feeling lifeless, especially since her reason for living was no longer with her. One day, while Silky was roaming around as a spirit, a young Arya had called out to her, mistaking Silky as her mother, but Arya's father reminded Arya that her mother had passed away. From that day onwards, Silky had claimed Arya to be the child she must protect, but in the present Arya finally awakens, all whilst Momo breaks into tears. Akarin prepares to attack Silky, seeing Momo hurt, but Momo cries for Akarin to chill out, allowing Silky to finally say her final piece. As Silky begins to crumble, it apologizes for hurting Arya, all whilst Momo hears that spirits that have no aura will be sent to the void and be deleted from their world, a cruel fate for Silky, who lived a tragic life. Hearing all of this, Arya questions her life, watching mindlessly as Silky wishes to spoil her child one last time, apologizing for being a terrible mother. Out of nowhere, Arya rushes to give Silky a hug, reassuring Silky that she did the best that she could and that Arya herself will shoulder the burden and remember Silky for the rest of her life, something that allows the spirit to finally pass on with a bit of closure. As the gang head home, they indulge in some somen noodles, all whilst Akarin is amazed at the lineup of girls in front of him. Momo starts off by apologizing for dropping the bowl on Arya's head, but Momo demands Arya apologize to Akarin for thinking so lightly of him. Arya clarifies that she hates Momo because she is a demon, annoying Momo as she tries to clear things up, but Arya points out how youthful Seiko is, plus Akarin transformed into a demon as well. As the girls slurp down the noodles, they continue to bicker, but before Arya takes her leave, she wonders why Akarin protected her when she was dead. Akarin simply says it's human to protect others in need, something that makes Arya realize Akarin is still human after all, running off as she feels taboo for falling for a demon like Akarin. Comedically, the gang decide to play some baseball in order to reattach Okarun's golden ball. But the question is, where is Akarin's second golden ball? At school the next day, Momo hears that Akarin doesn't have access to a computer to help with their search. But before Momo can schedule plans to meet during lunch or after school, Akarin apologizes, seeing as he'll be busy all day. During lunch, Momo decides to eat with her girlfriends, finding it suspicious that Akarin is busy all of a sudden. But as Momo heads to buy some juice, she wonders if she should check on Akarin just in case. Out of the corner of her eye, she spots Akarin on top of Arya. But as we flash back to a few minutes ago, we see Akarin is busy because he wants to train his body for any future fights. Seiko had given Akarin instructions to train his body, motivating Akarin to train hard in order to protect Momo, but out of nowhere Arya had asked to speak with Akarin. Arya cries that she loves Akarin, reaching out only to prepare to kiss him. Reacting in time, Akarin shoves Arya away, weirded out by Arya's sudden confession along with her awkward attitude. As the two begin to wrestle, Akarin fears he has no right to be romantically involved with a popular girl. But Arya does admit that she has little experience when it comes to dating. Surprisingly, our duo end up tripping on each other, ending up with Akarin on top of Arya, who welcomes Akarin's advances. It was at that moment when Momo stumbled onto them, completely misunderstanding the situation as she stormed off, believing Akarin was spending his day with another girl. With Akarin left alone, Momo is seen depressed in her science class, completely bored whilst learning about a mantis shrimp's powerful punch. As for Akarin, he admits to being selfish for hiding his workout sessions, and as a result, he says he'll earn Momo's trust by getting stronger. But out of nowhere, Akarin's classmates disappear, all whilst water floods the floors. Heading outside, Akarin sees Arya is still with him, both freaked out by the blacked-out windows. At the same time, Momo is seen alone as well, annoyed by the rising water levels on the ground. But Momo is more worried about Akarin and his safety. Suddenly sensing something approaching, Momo hides, only to see a strange dinosaur roaming the hallways. When Momo tries to reposition herself to get a better look at the creature, she accidentally creates a ripple in the water she's standing in, signaling to the dinosaur her position. Locking onto Momo's position, the creature releases a beam breath attack, instantly shredding the area around it only to leave once the area has been decimated. Luckily, Momo is unharmed, having ducked below the beam. But cutting back to Akarin, he reveals that he had experienced something similar before, having been caged in by stone walls, and the only way to escape is to defeat the boss. Arya is surprised to hear that aliens exist, but out of nowhere, a strange mantis shrimp monster appears before them, suddenly rushing our duo as it cries out for Chiquitita. Evading the mantis shrimp's attack, Akarin had transformed to save Arya. But as Akarin prepares to brawl with the mantis shrimp, he is suddenly pressed into the ground by some Serpoians using their telekinesis. Arya tries, ordering the aliens to vanish, but with a wave of their hands, the Serpoians knock Arya back, revealing that it was them who created the black veil over the school to only allow those with high spiritual power through. The Serpoians reveal that they are after Akarin's powers, and they want to experiment on Akarin to harness his curse, forcing Akarin to give in as the Serpoians' psychic powers are seemingly preventing Akarin from transforming. As the aliens raise Akarin into the air, ready to experiment on him, some strange hair suddenly wrap around the aliens, followed by a torrential gust of wind revealed to be Arya transformed, having taken on Silky's ballet fighting style. Having knocked down two of the three Serpoians, Arya quickly covers her eyes, seeing as Akarin is basically naked, but Arya turns around realizing a single Serpoian and the mantis shrimp are working together. As the shrimp attacks Arya chooses to ignore the shrimp, running along the wall only to target the lone Serpoian, but Arya is caught off guard when she is blown back by the alien's telekinesis. The shrimp is annoyed to have been caught in the crossfire, but as Arya makes note of the alien's powers, she continues to dance around the shrimp's advances. As Akarin searches the classrooms for spare clothes, he gets blown back by the shrimp's attack, impressing Arya, but when the Serpoian launches another telekinetic blast, Arya simply hides behind the shrimp to evade. Arya wonders if the shrimp is in love with her, taunting the creature whilst avoiding its attacks. But retaliating, Arya fires off a roundhouse kick only to catch the creature with a direct uppercut kick, pinning the monster into the ceiling. When Arya turns to face the lone Serpoian, she is suddenly flung into the nearby wall, having underestimated the alien's powers, but having bought enough time. The Serpoians all reveal their true forms, all whilst the mantis shrimp seems to have fully recovered. Arya tries cursing at the aliens, but is blown through a wall when struck by the shrimp's punch. But as Arya writhes in pain, Akarin suddenly calls out to them. Akarin covers up his private parts, slowly waddling over to Arya's position only to transform whilst naked. Sadly, the Serpoians simultaneously pin Arya and Akarin down with their telekinesis, completely negating their transformations. But seeing as the Serpoians can't move, they have the shrimp bash Akarin's head in. Surpassing his limits, Akarin manages to transform and headbutt the shrimp away, but it's revealed that Momo was the one that helped weaken the alien's telekinesis. Pissed to see there are Serpoians in front of her. With it being a 3-on-3 match, Akarin and Arya transform ready to attack, but Momo gets flustered seeing Akarin is still naked, all suddenly pinned down by the Serpoian's telekinesis. The Serpoians take the chance to wake up the mantis shrimp, artificially injecting the monster with power, only for the mantis shrimp to suddenly evolve before their eyes. In the blink of an eye, the shrimp pummels Arya and Akarin with several punches, but before the duo can be knocked out, Momo comes to her senses, fighting off the Serpoian's telekinesis with her own psychic powers. Trying again, Akarin and Arya transform, prompting Arya to lead with an axe kick onto the shrimp. But the shrimp blocks only to send Arya into the ceiling. As the shrimp fires a devastating punch onto Arya, Akron intercepts, rescuing Arya. Working together, Akron helps maneuver around the shrimp's speed, all whilst Arya nails the shrimp with several kicks. But this makes Momo jealous. As Momo loses focus, the Serpoians manage to pin our trio down, but out of nowhere the water level rises absurdly, suddenly drowning everyone. Although our trio are able to breach the surface, Momo realizes that the nearby walls and ceiling are all water as well. But suddenly the building's lights turn off. Sensing a disturbing creature swimming by them, Momo cries that they should find an escape route, but Akron states that the monster before them is called Nessie, something Arya adores about Akron. The Serpoians attempt to scold Nessie for not slaying Momo correctly, but Nessie suddenly slays one of them with its beam breath. As Akron and Momo flee for dear life, Arya is suddenly struck from below, sent flying into the area of water that replaces the ceiling, all whilst the attacker is revealed to be the mantis shrimp who thrives underwater. Funnily enough, the shrimp still needs to breathe air. Worst of all, Akron realizes that Turbo Granny's powers can't swim. As Momo and Akron continue to swim to evade the shrimp's punches, Momo says she can't rescue Arya, seeing as the shrimp is in the way. When Akron offers to distract the shrimp for Momo to retrieve Arya, Momo gets annoyed, accusing Akron of only caring for Arya. Seeing as Momo is still angry about earlier, Akron reveals that everything he's done is to impress Momo, flustering her as he pushes Akron away. At that moment, our duo are struck by one another of the shrimp's punch, forcing Akron to tackle Momo aside as they both gaze into each other's eyes in the water. Getting an idea, Momo propels Akron towards the shrimp only to divert their course towards the ceiling to evade the shrimp's attacks. Having entered the ceiling, Momo grabs hold of Arya, all heading into a room where Momo manages to resuscitate Arya. Momo orders Arya to strip, seeing as their clothes are holding them back. But as we follow the mantis shrimp and the Serpoians, they seem to be fleeing from Nessie, who seems to be slaying everything in its path, forcing the Serpoians to prepare to merge with the others. As Arya and Momo ride Akron, they all dive in the water to face the aliens. But upon realizing that the Serpoians have merged with both Nessie and the mantis shrimp, our trio hurriedly evade the monster's beam attack. Breaching the surface for some air, the gang realize that the monster is absorbing water for its next beam attack, prompting the gang to agree to try and break the monster's neck to render the attack useless. Submerging once more, Arya takes charge by wrapping her hair around the monster's neck, choosing to dive towards the monster with her leg outstretched, but sadly the monster intercepts Arya with its fist, following with a flurry of attacks that stall long enough for it to unleash another beam attack. Racing against the beam, Momo and Akron manage to rescue Arya, realizing that the monster has the beam attack and the shrimp's close quarter punches. As our trio flees from the monster, Momo realizes something, but before she can say anything, an explosion separates our trio. Momo is revealed to be the monster's main target, barely able to hold her breath whilst in the water. But as the monster throws out a punch, Momo suddenly removes the water in their surroundings. Momo knows that mantis shrimps aren't able to unleash their full power on land, seeing as the impact from their punch would shred their own bodies. A weakness Momo has used to have the monster tear away at its own body. As a last-ditch effort, the monster latches onto Momo, attempting to drown her whilst it charges up another beam attack. But Arya had reacted fast enough, latching onto the monster, all whilst giving Akron a direct path towards Momo. In the blink of an eye, Akron rushes and slays the monster, clinging onto Momo with his final breath of air, only for the surrounding area to return back to normal. Momo and Akron are relieved to be back in the school, but realizing that they are naked and soaking wet, our trio flee the scene, all whilst the other students demand to know what is happening. Elsewhere, we see the school nurse, Ju, asking if our trio is being bullied, but sadly our trio utters nothing. Ju insists that they tell the truth, as she doesn't tolerate bullying, but as another teacher tells Ju she is receiving a phone call, Ju leaves our trio alone while she attends to other business. Both Momo and Arya begin to break down, seeing as their public image is ruined, but Akron wonders why the aliens were after Turbo Granny's power. Momo asks how Arya was able to use Acro Silky's powers, reasoning that since the tall lady revived Arya, it would make sense she now shares the tall lady's powers. But Akron states that Arya herself may also be a target seeing as she has powers. Momo finds it strange that the aliens want Turbo Granny's yokai powers, but Akron utters that it must be because the demons and aliens of Earth are fighting against the aliens invading their world. This also explains the reason for aliens needing to experiment on spiritual humans. But regardless, the girls continue to cry that everyone has seen them naked, all agreeing to blame the mess on Momo, who asked everyone to strip. Right on cue, Arya's friends enter the room to retrieve Arya, blaming the mess on Momo, but Momo could care less. Now alone, Momo demands the reason why Akron was on top of Arya. But as Akron mutters that he was secretly trying to get stronger to impress Momo, Momo can't help but admire Akron. Hearing that Akron was getting stronger for her sake, Momo begins to tease Akron. But before Akron can leave, our lovebirds exchange some flirty glances. Out of nowhere, Miko and Yuko appear asking to know why Momo was naked on Akron. But when Momo tries explaining things, the girls only get more confused. Getting to the bottom of things, Miko deduces that there is a love triangle between Arya, Akron, and Momo, and Akron seems to be the one the girls are fighting over. In class, Arya's classmates offer to help Arya with any trouble she is facing, something Arya smirks about seeing as her popularity hasn't diminished whatsoever. But suddenly Arya's classmates blame Momo for embarrassing Arya. Hearing her classmates scheming horrible things to further punish Momo, Arya admits to being the one that spread the heinous rumors about Momo to begin with, refusing to tolerate any further harassment of Momo. As Arya marches through the school halls, she sits alone wondering why she stood up for her sworn enemy. But out of nowhere, Momo appears checking in on her. Momo asks how Arya is doing, but Arya tries putting up a wall between them, demanding that Momo leave her alone. Momo deduces that Arya didn't add any more fuel to her already bad image. But before Arya can say another word, the girls notice the mantis shrimp is still alive, both preparing to engage the creature. Surprisingly, the monster suddenly collapses, crying out to its baby, Chiquititia. Waking up, the shrimp realizes it's been patched up, but Seiko and our trio confront the monster, wondering if the shrimp is an alien or a Japanese kappa. As the shrimp takes a battle stance, it realizes it has been served some curry, immediately kneeling down as it cries tears of gratitude to have been served a loving meal. With the gang buying some sushi, they all start fighting over who gets what, all pairing up with Turbo Granny brawling with Akron, Seiko taking on the shrimp, Momo and Arya arguing with each other. Finishing up the meal, the shrimp reveals that his son is very ill, and if his son doesn't receive blood every day, he'll pass away just like the shrimp's wife did. The shrimp's manner of speech is quite ambiguous, but the gang hear that the shrimp's homeland is war-torn, so he had to leave to a foreign land to earn some extra currency. The shrimp begins blaming himself for his son's condition, and worst of all, there is nothing he can do about it, suddenly shedding some tears. Akron asks what he can do to help, wondering if he can hand over his private parts to help the shrimp get paid, and then the gang can simply attack and retrieve his private parts once the shrimp's family is taken care of. Momo refuses to allow Akron to be put in danger, but Arya sides with Akron's selfless offer, prompting both girls to begin arguing. The shrimp says he must get a proper job and not inconvenience our trio further, promising to never harm our trio, but before the mantis shrimp can leave, Seiko says the shrimp's blood stinks. With Seiko sniffing at the bandages wrapping the shrimp, Seiko takes out some milk, asking the shrimp to taste it, but surprisingly the shrimp utters that the milk is equivalent to the blood that runs through their body. Seiko reveals that the mantis shrimp's blood is similar to cow's milk, and seeing as the shrimp's issue can be resolved with milk, Seiko says she'll give the shrimp a cow to give it an infinite source of blood for his sick child. As the shrimp beams up a cow, he promises to repay the favor in the future, instantly disappearing from the skies. Back inside, our trio begs Seiko to buy them new school uniforms, but Seiko refuses. Momo says they are out of money and must resort to begging, but Akron points out it is the third time Seiko had bought them a replacement uniform. Seiko orders Momo to do an impersonation of Hiroshi Abe the comedian if she wants her uniform, forced to keep up the act as she answers the doorbell. But Momo suddenly greets Jin and Juji, Momo's childhood friend and first love. Akron is quite intimidated by Jin's handsome figure, but out of nowhere Jin bursts out laughing, weirding everyone out with his sporadic behavior. As Seiko shows Jean to his room, Seiko reveals that Jean will be living with Momo from today forth. But Momo refuses to live with a boy, all whilst Arya accuses Momo of gathering demonic allies. Seeing as it's getting late, Arya heads home, leaving Akron to bid farewell as well. But before he leaves, he shyly wishes to see Momo tomorrow at school, something that pleases Momo. Back in the house, Jean scoffs down Seiko's cooking, all while Seiko tells Momo that Jean is living with them since Jin's parents have been hospitalized. As Jean and Momo wash the dishes, Jean takes the chance to apologize for making fun of Momo when they were younger, telling Momo he can see ghosts now. Momo asks if Jean had come into contact with any golden balls, but Jean denies such a thing, telling Momo that after they went their separate ways in middle school, Jean and his family wound up moving out into a house surrounded by a forest. Immediately, Jean felt something was strange with his new home, and when Jean told his family, they laughed it off, leading to one fateful night when the entity haunting him showed itself to Jean. Ever since then, his parents' health had gotten worse, leading Jean to rally together 5 exorcists that could solve his issue, but sadly 3 of the 5 had taken their own lives soon after facing the entity. As a last resort, Jean is asked if Seiko could help him, something Momo reasons was the right thing to do. Jean once again deeply apologizes for making fun of Momo when they were younger, but suddenly Seiko reminds the pair that her powers only work in Kamigo City, meaning Momo herself will have to deal with the issue, and Seiko suspects the golden ball must be behind this somehow. At school the next day, Jean celebrates seeing as he's transferred schools, immediately captivating the girls in his class. Although Jean's parents are hospitalized, it doesn't stop Jean from asking for a girl's phone number, even dancing through the class as he's seated next to Momo and her friends. Unfortunately, Miko and Yuko begin falling for Jean as well, but Jean clarifies to everyone that he and Momo are childhood friends living together, something that Momo's friends forbid, seeing as Momo and Akron are already a thing. Following Akron, he is completely lost in thought, agitated at the thought of Jean re-entering Momo's life and being all chummy with her. Akron fears Momo will stop talking to him if she starts dating Jean, refusing such a reality as he strives to grow stronger. But suddenly Momo appears to check on Akron. As Momo sits down for her lunch, she offers to feed Akron since his hands are tied up, but sadly Jean joins them, offering Momo her favorite yogurt drink. Seeing Momo drawn towards Jean, Akron can't bear the sight of the girl he likes being taken away from him, choosing to leave the scene. But as he turns a corner, he suddenly notices a mannequin bolting towards him. Crying out for Momo, Akron begins fleeing from the mannequin, but the mannequin easily overtakes Akron, now charging towards Momo. Momo prepares to restrain the mannequin, but suddenly Jean tackles her to the ground, allowing the mannequin to leap over them, but Momo suddenly spots a golden ball attached to the mannequin. Seeing as Jean is refusing to let go of her, Momo has no choice but to grab hold of the mannequin with her powers, ultimately being dragged along with the mannequin, all whilst Akron runs after them. Seeing as the mannequin has left the school, Akron transforms, preparing to race after them, managing to catch up to the mannequin. When Momo tries reaching out to Akron, the mannequin leaps onto a building, giving Momo a chance to catch the mannequin on a power line, but the mannequin's momentum shreds the power line. With Momo suddenly seeing a bus heading their way, Akron manages to pull Momo to safety, grabbing hold of her only to fling her and Jean onto his back. Still chasing after the mannequin, Akron grounds himself, allowing Momo to pull the mannequin towards them, but the mannequin puts up a good fight, refusing to give up. As the mannequin breaks apart, it manages to escape capture, only to reassemble itself, all whilst continuing to run away. Having lost sight of the mannequin, Akron reverts back to his human form, all watching as Momo smacks her hands together, managing to guide our trio toward the junkyard. Sneaking inside, the gang spot the mannequin sprawled out on the ground, leading Momo to reveal she had retrieved the mannequin's heart when it split apart, and she had been punching the heart to locate the mannequin's screams. Momo demands to have Akron's golden ball back in exchange for the mannequin's heart, but suddenly a voice calls to Teru, the mannequin before them. Freaking out, Teru rushes onto the pile of junk nearby, searching around for the voice only to unearth another mannequin he calls Hannah. Teru cries that he'll do anything to be together with Hannah, something that resonates with Akron, as he hears Teru confessing his deepest desires to spend the rest of his life with her. Returning home, our trio begged to have Hannah stay at Seiko's home, And as for Teru, he promises to not act up as long as Hannah is safe. Momo also mentions how the gold ball she saw on Teru was simply a Christmas ornament. But as Momo prepares to set the table for dinner, Akron can't help but get jealous seeing how flirty Jean is to Momo. Remembering how Teru spilled his heart out to Hannah, Akron cries he won't lose Momo to Jean, but Seiko orders the boys to keep it down. Seiko reminds Momo that she'll be heading to Jin's house this weekend, leading Momo to reveal that Jean needs his house exorcised and is the reason he is here in the first place. With Akron agreeing to come along, we cut to the school where we see some school kids planning on messing with a Ouija board, but out of nowhere, Teru sprints past them, leaping through a window. Wanting to see Hannah, Teru boards a train, but as he dreams of visiting his loved one, he is accidentally run over by a truck. Following Momo, she is seen waiting outside with Hannah for Teru's arrival. But as time passes by, Momo falls asleep outside beside Hannah. As the sun begins to rise, Teru finally arrives, apologizing for visiting so late. But at the same time, we see Jean on edge, unable to sleep due to the mysterious entity haunting him. With the big day arriving, our trio board a train, passing time by playing Old Maid, but Akron seems to be losing constantly. Jean tries cheering Akron up with some snacks, but Akron simply gets more depressed seeing Momo and Jean reminisce about their childhood, making Akron feel pathetic as he sees his own jealous reflection in the window. Akron tries distracting himself by uttering that he needs to retrieve his golden ball no matter what, but seeing as Jean and Momo are non-stop chatting, Akron interrupts in by educating the two on the Tsukinoko. Coincidentally, Jean utters that his village as a legend revolving around the Tsukinoko shrine, where the villagers worshipped a great serpent for 200 years. Seeing as Jean has stolen his spotlight, Akron tries bringing up the other myths to intrigue Momo. But accidentally, Akron starts to hit off with Jean as he is the second person to take a liking to the paranormal, just like Momo. Jean asks if he can be friends with Akron. Akron says he doesn't deserve any friends since he is quite awkward. But as the trio leave the train, they enter a hot spring district where Jin's father works. Seeing as his father researches volcanoes in a nearby college, Jin's family had to move out to the hot spring town, and rumor has it that the nearby volcano erupted 200 years ago. As Jean guides the duo up some stairs, they're forced to climb several hundred flights of stairs, finally making it to Jin's home exhausted. At first glance, Momo can't detect any abnormal spirits nearby, but as the trio enter the home, we see the villagers of the hot spring town spying on them with their maniacal grins. Looking around the house, neither Momo nor Akron find anything off about Jin's home, beginning to doubt Jin's story about strange occurrences in his home. But Momo does mention how the ghost could be hiding at the moment. Momo suspects the enemy has a weak spiritual presence, meaning it'll be easy to defeat them, exciting Jean. Jean rushes off to fetch some refreshments for our duo, all whilst Momo decides to visit the hot springs, promising to return by sundown. Seeing as the boys are alone, Jean asks to teach Akron soccer, showing off the basics to dribble and kick, but Akron gets embarrassed seeing how pathetic he is. Akron wonders if he can impress Momo with his new soccer skills by the time she gets back. But as Akron continues to train with Jean, Jean suddenly asks if Akron loves Momo. Following Momo, she indulges in the hot spring, having intentionally left the boys alone seeing as Jean is Akron's first male friend. Back with Akron, he cries that he loves Momo as a friend, but when he hears Jean say he loves Momo's eyes and personality, the boys begin to argue who loves Momo more. When Jean tries bringing up his childhood friend's status to win the argument, Akron suddenly remembers his kiss with Momo, quietly accepting victory as we cut back to Momo, who decides to wrap up her bath. Momo says it's unfortunate that the hot spring is walled off, wanted to see the scenery whilst bathing, but out of nowhere, Julian Kitu, Jamanuel Kido, Juichi Kyo, Jihiko Kitu, and Jujina Kido all enter the mixed-gender hot spring, ready to join Momo. As Akron and Jean continue to wrestle and fight over Momo's honor, they suddenly stop, having noticed a strange room appear next to Jin's home. But as this happens, the five men enter the bath, all approaching Momo. Jean and Akron inspect the wall, separating the house and the extra room. But upon realizing it's hollow, Jean reasons they should have a closer look. Jean takes charge by smashing a hole in the wall, shocked to see hundreds of talismans crammed inside the wall. But as we cut back to Momo, we see the five adults swimming towards her. Momo wonders if she can deal with them all at once, But before Momo can activate her psychic powers, she is tackled and pinned down below the hot spring waters. Running out of breath, Momo lets loose a burst of psychic powers, managing to smack the attacker with the snake head of the nearby water dispenser. Within a few seconds, the hot springs dispenser begins to overflow, distracting the men long enough for Momo to leave the bath, all whilst the surrounding infrastructure of the hot spring begins falling on the men. Before Momo can flee the scene, one of the men manages to catch up to her, but luckily the remaining walls of the hot spring perfectly collapse on the man, revealing a gorgeous view of the hot spring village. In the corner of her eyes, Momo spots Turbo Granny bathing in the hot spring, learning that she had tagged along when she heard the gang was visiting a hot spring village. Momo fears that she'll have to pay for the damages, quickly hiding to change in her clothes, all while several Chamber of Commerce workers enter the hot spring, accusing the creepy men of destroying everything. Momo hears that the men who attacked her are from the Keto family, watching as the creepy men are hunted by the commerce workers. Plus, Momo suspects that Turbo Granny had helped her earlier. As the duo head home, Momo asks what Turbo Granny thinks about Jin's home, but Turbo Granny doesn't like the vibe of the home, declaring that it soaked up too much blood. Back with the boys, they wonder if they should enter the strange room, but Akron reasons they should wait for Momo to return. Upon hearing someone at the door, Akron rushes to answer, only to spot Naki, Juriko, Juju, Junko, and Jitimu strangely staring at them. Funnily enough, Jean invites them in for snacks, all gossiping how the town is run by them, and those who don't listen need to be punished. Naki orders Jean to eat some snacks with him, reminding Jean that he doesn't pay rent, so he should listen to her, especially since Jin's parents are so weak. Akron hears that Jin's home is a rental, and seeing as his parents are hospitalized, the kiddo ladies have been allowing him to stay for free. Jean asks Akron to not mention the hole in the wall, and when Naki demands to know why Jean left all of a sudden, Jean cries that he was simply visiting Akron, his new friend, and now he's returned to show Akron his home. Naki asks if Jean is still trying to hire spirit mediums, something that pisses off the other ladies. But Jean says a shy boy like Akron could never be a spirit medium. Taking out a shotgun, Naki reminds Jean that she has a license to hunt, recounting a time when she accidentally shot someone, but Jean says Naki shouldn't joke about such things. Right on cue, Officer Tsuru appears, strangely flinching when Naki glares at him. Following Tsuru are the 5 creepy men from earlier, now all dressed up, revealing that it was thanks to Tsuru that they weren't punished after being captured. As the men join the ladies, we see Juichi asking what Jin's been up to, demanding that Jean tell him the truth. Jean reassures Juichi that he was picking up a friend for a home visit, but Juichi suddenly locks onto Akron, asking Akron what Jin's favorite soccer team is. Juichi says a friend of Jean would surely know, and with the situation tense, Akron says it's Saint-Germain, successfully clearing himself of all suspicion. Jean is surprised Akron knew the answer, but Akron says the poster he put up to hide the hole has the answer. When the ladies ask when Jin's lady friend is coming back, Jean tries playing dumb, but Naki says she knows Jean is lying. Cutting over to Momo, she is seen visiting a Tsukinoko shrine, but is caught off guard seeing a strange man balancing on his head. Spotting Momo, Manjiro apologizes for the awkward sight, inviting her to see the shrine. Upon entering, Momo is disappointed to see the dried-out remains of a snake, especially since there were tales of a mythical snake guarding the village. The legend says that the snake lived in the nearby volcano and caused it to erupt everything it got hungry. So the villagers had offered up a child every year for the past 200 years to quell the snake's hunger. And in exchange, the volcano remained dormant, and the village was allowed to enjoy the hot springs. Manjiro says nowadays, erecting a shrine to pray to the snake is enough. And Tsukinoko was a name given to the snake to attract more tourists. But Manjiro does mention how people in the past would continue to uphold the sacrifices in fear of the volcano erupting again. As Momo heads back to Jin's home, she excitedly calls out to the boys, but is horrified to see Akron and Jean have been knocked out, all whilst Naki declares that their last offering has arrived. As the men attack Momo, she starts off by firing off a kick, knocking out one of the men, only to knee another with the help of her psychic abilities. Sadly, Momo is pushed into a devastating punch, barely able to block it with a barrier, quickly recovering and knocking down another by tossing a table at them. Caught off guard, Momo is restrained from behind, receiving a brutal head but that blurs her vision. Luckily, Turbo Granny scares off the man, causing him to bump his head, but Momo is more curious who these people are. Momo demands that everyone leave this house, but out of nowhere, Naki leaps towards Momo with a flying kick, blowing her back. As Naki chases after Momo with some insane movement, she is able to maneuver around the flying obstacles Momo sends her way, only to appear in front of Momo, comboing her with various strikes. To top things off, Naki smashes Momo through the talisman-filled room, wondering how Momo can use psychic abilities. Momo is weirded out by the strange room, piquing Naki's attention to see a talking cat with Momo, all whilst revealing that the Kiddu family has been protecting the village for generations. Momo demands that the strange people leave Jin's home, but Naki declares it's thanks to the Kiddu family that their village hasn't been burnt to a crisp, and this is because they've been upholding the tradition of sacrifices to the serpent god. Momo is disgusted by what she is hearing, and to make things worse, Naki reveals that Jin's home was the original location for when their ancestors sacrificed people. Naki says it's perfect that they have 3 offerings, prompting the room to strangely begin to morph as it begins swallowing Momo whole, mimicking sand to absorb Momo. Momo quickly makes use of her psychic abilities to pull herself out of the room, but Naki and the others guard the exit, forcing Momo back into the room as they declare Momo needs to be sacrificed. Trapped and seeing no way out, Momo cries for Turbo Granny to do something. But luckily Jean and Akaran have awoken, managing to pin down Naki and several others with a couch. When Akaran calls out to Momo, Momo tries reaching out to Akaran, but out of nowhere the room collapses, sending everyone tumbling into the abyss below. Barely surviving the fall, the gang wonder how they'll escape. Plus they're confused at the various houses in the pit with them. Hearing Jean calling for help, Momo quickly uses her powers to reach out to Jean before he falls, but having missed her timing, Jean helplessly slips and falls. Strangely, Jean falls onto something that softens his fall, awakening the horrifying Serpent Lord. Immediately, Naki and the Kidda family get into formation to greet the serpent, offering up our trio as sacrifices, but Turbo Granny points out how the serpent is a Karagari. Akaran remembers a Karagari to be a Mongolian deathworm, a giant man-eating earthworm that lives in the Gobi Desert. And this was the creature the Kiddus have been worshipping for the past 200 years. Momo warns the Kiddus to not agitate the giant worm, but ignoring the kids' pleads, the worm ultimately attacks the Kiddus. Realizing they don't stand a chance against such a creature, our trio decide to hide in a building for now. But as they enter a house, Jean suddenly spots Momo and Akaran writhing in pain. At that moment, Akaran begins to transform, unable to hold back his instincts as he crawls towards Jean.